The frozen November rain hammered against the chapel windows as Sarah Chen stood beside her sister Emily's casket, one hand pressed against her 7-month belly, the other clutching the funeral program that blurred through her tears. Emily had been 28. Brain aneurysm. No warning. Just gone. Sarah felt her husband Marcus shift beside her, checking his phone for the third time during the eulogy. His jaw was tight, that familiar expression of barely concealed irritation that had become his default around her lately. She'd gained 43 pounds with this pregnancy. He'd made sure she knew exactly how many. The priest spoke about Emily's kindness, her dedication to teaching, her love for her family. But Sarah could barely hear the words over the sound of her own breaking heart. Emily had been the only family she had left after their parents died 5 years ago. Now she was utterly alone except for the man beside her who could barely look at her anymore. "We need to talk," Marcus whispered as the service ended and mourners began filing out into the bitter rain. His voice had that edge to it, the one that made Sarah's stomach clench with dread. "Marcus, not now. Please." Her voice cracked. "I just buried my sister. Actually, now is perfect." He stood, buttoning his expensive suit jacket. "Let's step outside." Something in his tone made the remaining mourners glance their way. Sarah saw Emily's best friend Jessica pause near the chapel doors, her eyes narrowing with concern. But Sarah followed Marcus anyway, stepping into the covered portico where rain drummed against the roof like accusations. That's when she saw her. The woman leaning against Marcus's Tesla, trying to look somber in a black dress that probably cost more than Sarah's entire maternity wardrobe. Blonde. Young. 24, maybe 25. The kind of body Sarah used to have before pregnancy transformed her into something Marcus clearly found repulsive. "This is Chloe," Marcus said flatly. No preamble. No gentleness. Just cold introduction like they were at a business meeting. "We've been seeing each other for 6 months. The world tilted. Sarah grabbed the portico column to steady herself, her pregnant belly throwing off her balance. "What?" "I want a divorce." He pulled papers from his inner jacket pocket. Crisp. Official. Pre-planned. "I had my attorney draw these up. I need you to sign them." Sarah stared at the documents, rainwater creeping under the portico and soaking her shoes. "You're serving me divorce papers at my sister's funeral?" "I'm being honest with you." Finally. Marcus kept his voice low, but his eyes were hard. "This marriage was a mistake, Sarah. You're not who I thought you were. You've let yourself go. You have no ambition beyond being someone's wife. Chloe understands my world. She's a marketing director. She networks. She gets it. I'm pregnant." Sarah's voice came out strangled. "I'm 7 months pregnant with your baby. I know. That's why I'm handling this now, before things get more complicated." He thrust the papers toward her. "My lawyer says if we file before the baby's born, we can work out custody arrangements without as much hassle. Sign these, and I'll make sure you're taken care of. The apartment on the east side is yours. I'll transfer $50,000 to cover expenses until you get back on your feet." Chloe stepped forward then, her heels clicking on the wet stone. "Sarah, I know this is hard. But Marcus and we have something real. Something mature. You'll understand someday when you find someone who actually suits you." The words hit like physical blows. Sarah looked at this woman, this stranger, talking to her about maturity and understanding at her sister's funeral, and something inside her went very quiet and very still. "The apartment is in my name," Marcus continued, his tone suggesting he was being generous. "The lease is paid through the end of the year. That gives you 4 months to figure things out. I've already moved my things out. Chloe and I are staying at the Four Seasons until we find something permanent." "You already moved out?" Sarah's voice was barely a whisper. "When?" "Tuesday. While you were at the hospital making arrangements for Emily." He said it like it was completely reasonable. I didn't want to burden you with this while you were dealing with the funeral planning. Behind them, mourners were starting to emerge from the chapel. Sarah saw Jessica pushing through the crowd, her face furious. She saw Emily's principal, Mr. Harrison, his expression shocked. She saw people she'd known for years witnessing her complete humiliation. Sign the papers, Sarah. Marcus's patience was clearly wearing thin. Don't make this harder than it needs to be. You have no job, no income, and no family support now that Emily's gone. I'm offering you a clean break and enough money to start over. Take it. Marcus Chen, you are a worthless piece of... Jessica had reached them, her voice rising above the rain. This is a private conversation, Chloe interjected, stepping between them with practiced authority. Maybe you should mind your own business. Emily was my best friend for 15 years. Jessica's eyes were blazing. Sarah is like a sister to me. This absolutely is my business. She turned to Sarah. Don't sign anything. Not now. Not like this. But Sarah wasn't listening. She was remembering the envelope that had arrived 3 days ago, forwarded from Emily's apartment. From a law firm in San Francisco. Sterling and Associates. She'd been too overwhelmed with funeral arrangements to open it, too destroyed by grief to deal with anything beyond choosing caskets and writing obituaries. The envelope was still in her purse. Unopened. Waiting. I need a pen, Sarah heard herself say. Sarah, no, Jessica grabbed her arm. But Sarah was already taking the papers, already signing her name on each page with mechanical precision. Her hand shook, making her signature look like a stranger's, but she kept going. 7 months pregnant. Sister dead. Husband leaving her for his mistress at the funeral. The humiliation was so complete it had circled back around to something like numbness. There. She handed the papers back to Marcus. Happy? He actually looked relieved. This is better for everyone, Sarah. You'll see. In a few months, you'll realize I did you a favor. Keys to the apartment, Chloe said, extending her hand. Marcus gave me his set, but we need yours too. Foreclosure. Sarah pulled her apartment keys from her purse with shaking fingers and dropped them into Chloe's waiting palm. The metallic clink seemed impossibly loud against the rain. I'll have my attorney contact you about the settlement details, Marcus said, already turning toward his car. Take care of yourself, Sarah. And the baby. They drove away in his Tesla, leaving Sarah standing in the rain beside her sister's empty casket being loaded into the hearse. Jessica wrapped an arm around her shoulders, cursing steadily under her breath, but Sarah felt nothing. Just a vast emptiness where her life used to be. The mourners dispersed quickly after that, uncomfortable with the scene they'd witnessed. Mr. Harrison pressed a business card into Sarah's hand. Emily spoke about you constantly, he said quietly. If you need anything, please call. Then he was gone too, leaving Sarah and Jessica alone with the funeral director who was pointedly checking his watch. Come on, Jessica said firmly. You're staying with me tonight. We'll figure this out. But Sarah shook her head. I need to go to the apartment. Get some things before, her voice broke. Before what? Before she became homeless. Before she had nowhere to go. Jessica drove her to the East Side apartment Marcus had so generously left her until the end of the year. It was a small one-bedroom in a building that had seen better days. Sarah had never loved it, but it had been home. Now it felt like a tomb. Inside, everything Marcus owned was gone. His clothes, his laptop, his coffee maker, even the TV they'd bought together. The apartment had been stripped of his presence so thoroughly it was like he'd never existed. Only Sarah's things remained, her maternity clothes, her books, the baby items she'd been slowly collecting. The nursery she'd started decorating in the second bedroom stood half-finished, mocking her with its cheerful yellow paint and hopeful future. That bastard, Jessica breathed, looking around at the emptiness. That absolute bastard. Sarah sank onto the couch, her hand moving to her belly where the baby was kicking. Strong, insistent movements that reminded her she wasn't completely alone. Not yet. I have no job, she said aloud, testing the words. I quit teaching when I got pregnant because Marcus said we didn't need my income. I have $3,000 in my personal checking account. The joint account, she laughed, a sound without humor. He probably emptied that already. Jessica was already on her phone. I'm calling my lawyer friend. We're going to fight this, Sarah. He can't just abandon you while you're pregnant. There are laws. I signed the papers. Sarah's voice was flat. I signed them in front of witnesses. At my sister's funeral. How do you think that's going to look to a judge? The apartment was cold. Marcus must have turned off the heat before he left. Sarah pulled a blanket around her shoulders and stared at her purse where that unopened envelope waited. Sterling and Associates. San Francisco. What's that? Jessica asked, following her gaze. I don't know. It came for Emily. But Sarah couldn't finish the sentence. It was forwarded to me. Open it. Sarah's fingers felt numb as she tore open the envelope. Inside was a letter on heavy cream stationery, the kind that suggested serious money and serious lawyers. Dear Ms. Emily Chen, we regret to inform you of the passing of your maternal grandmother, Catherine John Sterling. As the senior partner of Sterling and Associates, I have been instructed to contact you regarding Mrs. Sterling's estate. You are named as a beneficiary in Mrs. Sterling's will. However, recent events necessitate an urgent meeting to discuss the full scope of your inheritance. Please contact this office immediately. Due to the time-sensitive nature of these arrangements, we must speak with you within 14 days of this letter's date, or the estate will proceed according to alternative provisions. My deepest condolences for your loss. Sincerely, Robert Sterling Senior Partner, Sterling and Associates. Sarah read it twice. 3 times. I don't understand. We don't have a grandmother. Mom was an only child. Her parents died before we were born. Jessica grabbed the letter, scanning it quickly. When was this dated? 3 weeks ago. The same week Emily, Sarah's throat closed. She never saw it. She died before it arrived. Sarah. Jessica's voice had gone very quiet. It says you're a beneficiary. Not Emily. You. That's impossible. I've never heard of Catherine John Sterling. But even as she said it, something tugged at Sarah's memory. Her mother, in the weeks before the car accident that killed her and Sarah's father, had been unusually withdrawn. Spending hours on the phone having hushed conversations. Looking at old photographs. Once, Sarah had found her crying over a picture of a severe-looking Chinese woman in an elegant silk cheongsam. Who is that? Teenage Sarah had asked. Her mother had quickly hidden the photo. No one. Just someone from a long time ago. Call them. Jessica thrust the letter back at her. Call them right now. Sarah looked at the phone number printed in crisp black ink. San Francisco area code. It was 6 p.m. on a Friday. They'd be closed. She dialed anyway. The phone rang once. Twice. Then a woman's voice, professional and alert, Sterling and Associates. How may I direct your call? Sarah's voice cracked. My name is Sarah Chen. I received a letter about Catherine John Sterling's estate. The woman's tone changed immediately. Ms. Chen. We've been trying to reach you. Please hold for Mr. Sterling. Before Sarah could respond, classical music filled the line. Jessica gripped her hand, both of them staring at the phone like it might explode. Ms. Chen. A man's voice, deep and authoritative. Thank you for calling. I'm Robert Sterling. I was your grandmother's attorney for 40 years, and I need to speak with you in person as soon as possible. Are you able to travel to San Francisco? I just buried my sister today, Sarah said numbly. And my husband just served me with divorce papers at her funeral. I'm 7 months pregnant and I have nowhere to go and $3,000 to my name. So no, I don't think I can travel to San Francisco. The silence on the other end stretched so long Sarah thought the connection had dropped. Then, Miss Chen, I'm going to ask you some questions. Please answer them honestly. Did your mother ever mention her mother to you? No. She said her parents died before I was born. Did she ever speak about growing up in San Francisco? She said she grew up in Oregon. Portland. Another long pause. Miss Chen, your mother left home when she was 18 and cut off all contact with her family. Your grandmother spent 30 years trying to find her, and when she finally succeeded, it was too late. Your parents had already passed away. Sarah felt Jessica's grip tighten on her hand. I don't understand. Your grandmother was Catherine Zhang Sterling. She built Sterling Pharmaceuticals from a single drugstore in Chinatown into a biotech empire worth $600 million. When she died 6 months ago, she left everything to her descendants. Everything, Miss Chen. The company, the properties, the investments. All of it. The room spun. Sarah gripped the couch cushion, her pregnant belly suddenly feeling like it was full of lead. That's impossible. It's very possible. And very real. But there are complexities. Your grandmother's will specify that her estate should go to her daughter if living, or to her daughter's children if not. Your mother passed away 5 years ago, which means you and your sister Emily were the sole heirs. But Emily died 3 weeks ago, before the will went through probate. Which means everything now comes to you. $600 million, Sarah whispered. Plus the controlling interest in Sterling Pharmaceuticals, valued at approximately $2 billion. Real estate holdings in San Francisco, Los Angeles, New York, and Shanghai. Investment portfolios. Art collections. Miss Chen, as of this moment, you are one of the wealthiest women in America. You just don't have access to it yet. Jessica made a sound like a strangled laugh. Sarah felt her vision tunneling, black spots dancing at the edges. Miss Chen? Are you still there? I signed divorce papers, she heard herself say. 2 hours ago. I signed them at my sister's funeral. Were the papers filed with the court? I don't know. He just gave them to me. I signed them and gave them back. Then there's still time. Robert Sterling's voice became crisp, businesslike. Miss Chen, I'm sending a car for you tonight. Pack what you need for a week. My firm will handle everything else. Your apartment, your belongings, your medical care. Everything. Do you understand? But I can't just, Miss Chen, your husband just made the biggest mistake of his life. He divorced Catherine Sterling's granddaughter at her sister's funeral, thinking he was discarding a nobody with no resources. We're going to make sure he understands exactly what he threw away. But first, we need to get you to San Francisco. Can you do that? Sarah looked at Jessica, who was nodding frantically. She looked at her empty apartment, stripped of everything that had made it a home. She looked at the divorce papers Marcus had thrust at her, already signed and witnessed. Yes, she said. I can do that. Good. A car will arrive at your address within the hour. Pack light. We'll provide everything you need once you arrive. And Ms. Chen? Yes? Welcome home. The car that arrived 53 minutes later was a black Mercedes S-Class with a driver in a suit who treated Sarah like she was made of glass. He loaded her single suitcase into the trunk while Jessica helped her into the back seat, both of them still half convinced this was an elaborate scam. I'm coming with you, Jessica announced, sliding in beside her. Ma'am, I was instructed to bring only Ms. Chen, the driver said apologetically. Then you're going to have to physically remove me from this car. Jessica crossed her arms. And I'm pretty sure manhandling a lawyer is frowned upon. The driver made a quick phone call, listened, then nodded. Mr. Sterling says it's fine. Welcome aboard, Ms. Park. They drove to a private airfield where a Gulfstream G650 waited, its interior more luxurious than any hotel Sarah had ever seen. Cream leather seats, polished with accents, a flight attendant who offered them champagne that Jessica accepted and Sarah declined because of the pregnancy. "This is insane," Sarah whispered as the plane lifted into the night sky. "This has to be a dream." But it wasn't a dream. It was the most surreal reality Sarah had ever experienced. The flight attendant brought Sarah sparkling water with lime and a selection of gourmet sandwiches she was too nauseous to eat. Jessica accepted wine and crackers, her lawyer's mind already working through implications. "Okay, let's think about this logically," Jessica said, pulling out her phone to take notes. "Marcus filed those divorce papers assuming you had nothing. He offered you $50,000 and an apartment lease like he was being generous. He was being generous." Sarah's voice was hollow. "I have no income. No job. No family now that Emily's," she couldn't finish. "Sarah, you're about to inherit $600 million in cash plus a pharmaceutical empire. Marcus didn't just leave you. He abandoned a fortune he didn't know existed. The divorce papers he had you sign, were they filed yet?" "I don't know. He said his attorney would handle it." Jessica's eyes gleamed. "Then we have a window. If those papers aren't filed, we can contest them. Argue you signed under duress at your sister's funeral. Hell, we might be able to void them completely. But I want the divorce." The words surprised Sarah even as she said them. "I don't want Marcus back. I just want him to know what he gave up." "Oh, sweetie." Jessica's smile was predatory. "He's going to know. Trust me, he's going to know." They landed at a private terminal in San Francisco where another car waited. Sarah had been to the city once on her honeymoon with Marcus, but the San Francisco she'd seen was tourist shops and crowded piers. This car took them into a different world entirely. Pacific Heights. Houses that probably cost more than small countries. The car stopped in front of a limestone mansion that looked like it had been transplanted from Paris, all elegant windows and wrought iron balconies. Lights glowed warm against the November darkness. "This was your grandmother's home," the driver said quietly. "It's yours now, Miss Chen." Sarah couldn't move. She stared at the mansion, at the manicured gardens and the brass plaque beside the door that read Sterling House, EST 1924. Her grandmother's house. A grandmother she'd never known existed. The front door opened and a man emerged. Late 60s, silver hair, wearing a cardigan despite the cold. "Miss Chen. I'm Robert Sterling. Welcome." Something about his kindness, the gentle way he helped her from the car, broke through Sarah's shock. She found herself crying, great heaving sobs that shook her pregnant body, and Robert Sterling simply held her elbow and let her cry. "I know," he said softly. "I know it's overwhelming. Come inside. We'll sort everything out." Sterling House was beautiful in a way that made Sarah's chest ache. Her grandmother's furniture, her grandmother's paintings, her grandmother's whole life preserved like a museum. But it was the photographs that stopped Sarah in her tracks. There, on the grand piano in the front parlor, was a photo of her mother. Young, maybe 20, laughing at something off camera. And beside it, dozens more. Sarah and Emily as children, faces Sarah recognized from photos her mother kept. Sarah's high school graduation. Emily's college graduation. Her own wedding to Marcus. "How?" Sarah whispered. Robert moved beside her. "Your grandmother hired private investigators to find your mother 30 years ago. When they finally located her, your parents had just died in the accident. Your grandmother was devastated. She'd lost her daughter without ever making peace. But she never stopped watching over you and Emily. Every milestone, every achievement. She documented all of it." Sarah picked up a photo from her wedding day. She and Marcus, smiling at the courthouse in their simple clothes. She thought no one cared enough to take pictures. But someone had. Her grandmother had. "She wanted to contact you," Robert continued. "Many times. But she was afraid. Your mother had run away for a reason, and Catherine didn't want to disrupt your lives. She decided she'd wait. Watch from a distance. Make sure you were safe and happy. And then, when the time was right, she'd reach out. She ran out of time, Sarah said. Yes. 6 months ago, Catherine had a massive stroke. She died within hours. But she'd prepared for every eventuality. Her will was ironclad. Everything was to go to her daughter or her daughter's children. She never gave up hope that someday, you'd all be reunited. Jessica had wandered to the piano, examining the photographs with careful attention. Sarah, look at this one. It was a recent photo. Emily, just last year, at the elementary school where she taught. Sarah had taken that picture herself, posted it on Facebook with the caption, "Best teacher in the world." Somehow, her grandmother had found it. She knew about Emily's death? Sarah asked. Robert nodded. She had people monitoring both of you. When Emily died, I reached out immediately. But the letter went to her old address and took time to forward. By then, he gestured helplessly. Dealing with the funeral. And my husband was serving me with divorce papers. Yes. I'm very sorry for that timing. Sarah sat down heavily on an antique sofa, her hand on her belly where the baby was kicking. Tell me about the money. All of it. I need to understand what's happening. Robert settled into a chair across from her, pulling out a leather folder. Catherine Zhang came to San Francisco in 1948 with her parents. They were refugees from the Communist Revolution in China. Her father was a traditional medicine practitioner. Her mother made herbal remedies. They opened a small shop in Chinatown. He showed Sarah photographs. A tiny storefront with Chinese characters painted on the window. A stern-looking man in traditional clothes. A beautiful woman grinding herbs with a mortar and pestle. Catherine was brilliant. She won a scholarship to UC Berkeley, studied biochemistry at a time when Chinese women weren't welcome in science. After graduation, she began modernizing her parents' traditional remedies. Testing them. Understanding the active compounds. By 1960, she'd developed a heart medication based on traditional Chinese herbs that outperformed anything on the market. More photographs. A young Catherine in a lab coat. The same woman at a ribbon-cutting ceremony. Articles from old newspapers, Chinatown pharmacist revolutionizes heart medicine. Sterling Pharmaceuticals was born from that first drug. Catherine built it deliberately, carefully. She refused to go public, keeping the company privately held so she could maintain control. She patented 47 medications over her lifetime. She built manufacturing facilities. Distribution networks. Research labs. By the time she died, Sterling Pharmaceuticals was worth over $2 billion. Sarah stared at the numbers in the folder. Patent revenues. Real estate holdings. Investment portfolios. Art collections. It was incomprehensible. Your mother was her only child, Robert continued. Born in 1965. Elizabeth. Catherine poured everything into her. The best schools, the best opportunities. But Elizabeth hated the pressure. Hated the expectations. When she was 18, she disappeared. Changed her name. Cut off all contact. Catherine searched for years. Hired investigators. Placed ads in newspapers. Nothing worked. Why did my mother run away? Sarah asked. Robert was quiet for a long moment. That's something Catherine never fully understood. Elizabeth left a note saying she wanted a normal life. She wanted to be someone other than Catherine Sterling's daughter. She wanted freedom. She got it, Sarah said bitterly. She married my dad. They were happy. Poor, but happy. They died happy. And they gave Catherine 2 granddaughters she never got to know. Until now. The clock in the hallway chimed midnight. Sarah realized she'd been awake for nearly 20 hours, most of them the worst of her life. Her sister's funeral. Marcus's betrayal. This impossible inheritance. There's more we need to discuss, Robert said gently. But it can wait until morning. I've had the master suite prepared for you. Your grandmother's room. If you're comfortable staying there. I don't know if I'm comfortable with any of this, Sarah admitted. But I'm too tired to care. The master's suite was like something from a movie. King-sized bed with silk sheets. Bathroom with a soaking tub. Walk-in closet filled with maternity clothes in Sarah's exact size. How? Sarah asked the housekeeper who was turning down the bed. Mr. Sterling had everything ordered the moment you confirmed you were coming. He estimated your sizes from recent photographs. If anything doesn't fit, we can have alterations made immediately. Sarah stood in the closet, touching cashmere sweaters and silk blouses. Designer maternity wear that probably cost more than her entire teaching salary for a year. This was her life now. This impossible, surreal life. Jessica found her there, tears streaming down her face. Hey, her friend said gently. You okay? I don't know how to be this person, Sarah whispered. I don't know how to be Catherine Sterling's granddaughter. I'm just Sarah Chen. I'm just a high school English teacher who got pregnant and got abandoned. You're Sarah Chen who inherited a pharmaceutical empire. You're Sarah Chen whose husband is about to realize he made the stupidest decision of his life. You're Sarah Chen who's about to become a mother and a CEO and whatever else you want to be. What if I'm not strong enough? Jessica pulled her into a hug, careful of the pregnant belly. Sarah, you've survived your parents' death. You've survived watching your only sister die. You've survived your husband publicly humiliating you at a funeral. You're the strongest person I know. You're going to be fine. That night, Sarah lay in her grandmother's bed, her bed now, and felt the baby kicking against her ribs. Strong, insistent movements that reminded her she wasn't alone. She had this child. She had Jessica. She had a grandmother's love that had transcended death itself. And somewhere in Seattle, Marcus was probably celebrating his freedom with Chloe, thinking he'd escaped a burden. Thinking he'd made the smart choice. He had no idea what was coming. Sarah woke to November sunlight streaming through floor-to-ceiling windows in momentary confusion about where she was. Then memory returned, Sterling House. San Francisco. Her grandmother's mansion. Her mansion now. She found Jessica already awake in the guest room, scrolling through her phone. You need to see this, her friend said, holding up the screen. It was a Facebook post from Chloe. A photo of her and Marcus at what looked like an expensive restaurant, champagne glasses raised. The caption read, "Finally free to be with the man I love. Sometimes the best things come from hard choices." #new beginnings #truelove. The post had been made last night. Hours after the funeral. Hours after Marcus had abandoned his pregnant wife. She tagged you, Jessica said grimly. Sarah Chen. She wanted you to see it. Sarah felt something cold settle in her chest. Not pain. Not heartbreak. Something harder. Clearer. Good, she said. Let her celebrate. Let them both celebrate. They have no idea what's about to happen. Robert Sterling arrived at 9 a.m. with a team of lawyers, accountants, and advisors. They assembled in Catherine's study, Sarah's study, and began walking through the reality of her inheritance. First, the timing, Robert said. Your grandmother died 6 months ago. The will has been in probate since then. Normally this would be straightforward, but Emily's recent death complicated matters. We need to update the beneficiary designations and transfer everything to your name. How long will that take? 2 weeks. Maybe 3. During that time, you're technically the heir but you don't have direct access to the accounts. However, he smiled slightly. Sterling Pharmaceuticals has a discretionary fund for family emergencies. I can authorize up to $10 million immediately for your use. Sarah's hand shook as she signed the authorization forms. $10 million. As an emergency fund. The absurdity made her want to laugh or cry or both. Now, Robert continued, about your husband. Marcus Chen. We've done some research. He slid a folder across the desk. He owns Chen Digital Marketing, valued at approximately $3 million. Annual revenue around $2 million. He has $400,000 in personal assets. And he just filed divorce papers with King County Superior Court. He filed them? Sarah's stomach dropped. This morning. 8 a.m. The filing shows he's seeking dissolution of marriage with a proposed settlement of $50,000 to you plus 4 months' rent on your apartment. Jessica made a sound of pure fury. That bastard. He didn't waste any time. No, he didn't, Robert agreed. Which brings us to options. Sarah, you can let this divorce proceed as filed. Marcus clearly thinks you have no resources and no ability to fight. He's offering minimal support because he believes you can't afford better representation. Or? Sarah asked. Or we file a response. We inform the court that you are Catherine Sterling's sole heir. We request a full accounting of marital assets and a fair division of the estate according to Washington state law. But I inherited this after the separation, Sarah said. It wouldn't be marital property anyway. True. But timing matters. Marcus initiated divorce proceedings while you were pregnant and grieving your sister's death. A judge might view that unfavorably. And there's another consideration. Robert pulled out more documents. Catherine set up trust funds for all her future descendants. There's already $50 million allocated for your child. That money is protected, but it could affect custody and support calculations. Sarah sat back, her head spinning. I don't want Marcus's money. She paused. What did she want? You want him to know what he gave up, Jessica finished. You want him to understand that he abandoned a fortune because he was too arrogant to see what was right in front of him. Yes, Sarah said quietly. I want him to know exactly what he threw away. Robert smiled. Then we proceed strategically. We let the divorce move forward. We don't reveal your inheritance until the last possible moment. We let Marcus and his attorney think they're getting exactly what they want. And then, when everything is about to be finalized, we show our hand. We reveal who you really are. We make sure every legal filing, every court document, every piece of paperwork reflects the truth. Marcus Chen divorced Catherine Sterling's granddaughter and sole heir. He'll try to contest it, Sarah said. He'll claim I hid my assets. You didn't hide anything. You didn't know about the inheritance when he filed. Everything will be documented. The timeline will be clear. Marcus divorced you in good faith, thinking you were nobody special. That's not your fault. That's his miscalculation. Over the next week, Sarah's life transformed in ways that still felt surreal. Robert's team handled everything. They hired a moving company to pack up her apartment in Seattle. They arranged for a local OBGYN at UCSF to take over her prenatal care. They set up accounts, arranged credit cards, prepared the paperwork to transfer Sterling Pharmaceuticals into her name. Sarah met with the company's board of directors. 12 people who'd worked with her grandmother for decades. They were skeptical at first, this pregnant 29-year-old showing up claiming to be Catherine's heir. But Robert had prepared meticulously. He showed them the will, the DNA tests he'd quietly arranged, the documentation proving Sarah's identity beyond any doubt. Catherine spoke about you, one board member said. An elderly Chinese woman named Dr. Helen Chu who'd been Catherine's first employee. She showed us your pictures. Told us about your accomplishments. She was so proud. So heartbroken she couldn't reach out. Why couldn't she? Sarah asked. Why did she stay away? Dr. Chu exchanged glances with the others. Your grandmother was a complicated woman. Brilliant, driven, sometimes ruthless in business. But she loved your mother desperately. When Elizabeth ran away, it broke something in Catherine. She blamed herself. Thought she'd pushed too hard, expected too much. She was terrified that reaching out to you girls would drive you away too. So she just watched from a distance? She did more than watch. She set up college funds for you and Emily anonymously. She made sure you got scholarships. When your parents died, she wanted to swoop in, but her lawyers advised against it. You were both adults by then. Legally independent. She was afraid you'd reject her the way your mother had. Sarah thought about all the lucky breaks in her life. The scholarship that paid for Berkeley. The grant that funded her master's degree. The teaching position that opened up exactly when she needed it. How many of those had been her grandmother's invisible hand, guiding her from the shadows? She left you everything, Dr. Chu continued. Not just money. She left you her legacy. Sterling Pharmaceuticals has been developing treatments for diseases that other companies ignore because they're not profitable enough. We research medications for rare conditions. We provide drugs to developing countries at cost. Catherine believed medicine should heal, not just generate profit. She built this company on that principle. Now it's yours to continue. Or change. Whatever you choose. The weight of that responsibility was crushing. But Sarah thought about her students, the kids she'd taught who couldn't afford basic healthcare. She thought about Emily, who'd dedicated her life to teaching in underfunded schools. She thought about her baby, growing inside her, who would inherit this empire someday. I want to learn, she said. I want to understand everything. The business, the science, the mission. I can't run a pharmaceutical company, but I can learn. I can try. The board members smiled. It was apparently the right answer. Back in Seattle, Marcus was having a very different week. He'd filed the divorce papers Monday morning, feeling triumphant. The attorney assured him everything was straightforward. No contested assets, no custody battle yet since the baby wasn't born. Sarah had signed willingly. This would be done in 60 days. Chloe moved into his condo Tuesday. They celebrated with expensive wine and talked about their future. Maybe they'd get married next year. Maybe they'd have their own kids. The world felt full of possibility. Wednesday, Marcus got a call from his largest client. Tech Solutions Incorporated, a company that provided 40% of his annual revenue. They were terminating their contract. Effective immediately. What? Why? Marcus had stammered. We've worked together for 5 years. Our performance has been excellent. We've been acquired, the CEO said. New management wants to bring marketing in-house. Nothing personal, Marcus. Just business. It wasn't until Thursday that Marcus learned who'd acquired Tech Solutions Incorporated Sterling Pharmaceuticals. A company he'd never heard of. A biotech firm based in San Francisco that apparently had enough money to buy out tech companies for fun. He didn't make the connection. Why would he? Friday brought more bad news. 2 more clients called to end their contracts. Both had been acquired by subsidiaries of companies that were themselves owned by larger holding companies that, if Marcus had traced the paperwork far enough, would have led back to Sterling Pharmaceuticals. His business was hemorrhaging revenue. Chloe started making noises about going back to her own apartment until things stabilized. His mother called to ask if it was true he'd divorced Sarah at a funeral and was that why his business was suddenly failing. It's just coincidence, Marcus insisted. Market fluctuation. I'll land new clients. But the new clients didn't come. His proposals went unanswered. Meetings got canceled. It was like he'd been blacklisted without anyone saying a word. Sunday morning, exactly 1 week after the funeral, Marcus woke to find Chloe packing. What are you doing? Going home. This isn't working, Marcus. We just need time to, your business is falling apart. You're stressed constantly. And honestly? She zipped her suitcase. I signed up to date a successful entrepreneur, not someone who's about to go bankrupt. I'm sorry, but I have to think about my career. She was gone by noon. Marcus sat in his condo, the condo he'd bought with business profits that were evaporating, and tried to figure out what had gone wrong. A week ago he'd been on top of the world. Now he was alone, losing money, and starting to wonder if divorcing Sarah had been a terrible mistake. Not because he loved her, but because maybe she'd been good luck. Maybe her steady, boring presence had been the foundation that kept everything else stable. His phone rang. His attorney. "Marcus, we have a problem. Sarah's lawyer just filed a response to the divorce petition." "What kind of response?" "She's requesting a full asset evaluation and discovery. She wants all your business records, all your personal accounts, everything. And she's hired Davidson and Associates to represent her." Marcus felt his stomach drop. Davidson and Associates was one of Seattle's most expensive family law firms. How can Sarah afford Davidson and Associates? She has no money. "I don't know. But they've filed preliminary paperwork that's very aggressive. They're claiming you abandoned her while pregnant, that you served papers at her sister's funeral, that you've hidden marital assets." "Marcus, this could get very ugly very fast." "She signed the settlement agreement. She agreed to everything. She signed under duress. At a funeral. While pregnant and grieving. Any judge will see that's questionable. We need to prepare for a real fight." After hanging up, Marcus sat staring at his phone. Something was very wrong. Sarah didn't have resources to hire expensive lawyers. She didn't have connections. She was nobody. Except she apparently was a nobody anymore. He Googled Sarah Chen Seattle and found nothing except her old faculty page at the high school. He tried Sarah Chen San Francisco on a whim and found something that made his blood freeze. A society page mentioned from a charity gala. Sarah Sterling Chen, granddaughter of the late pharmaceutical magnate Catherine Sterling, attended the Sterling Foundation's annual fundraiser. The article was dated 4 days ago. Marcus clicked through to more articles. Catherine Sterling's obituary from 6 months ago. Mentions of her daughter Elizabeth who died years earlier. Her granddaughters Sarah and Emily Chen. Sterling Pharmaceuticals. $1. $2 billion valuation. Real estate holdings. Investments. A fortune that made Marcus's little marketing company look like a lemonade stand. He'd divorced a billionaire heiress. He'd served her papers at her sister's funeral. He'd offered her $50,000 like he was being generous. The room spun. Marcus grabbed the desk to steady himself. His phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. "Hi Marcus. This is Sarah. I wanted you to know that I'm doing well. The baby is healthy. My grandmother left me a few things in her will. I hope you and Chloe are very happy together. All the best." There was a photo attached. Sarah, glowing and beautiful in an elegant maternity dress, standing in what looked like a mansion. Behind her, Marcus could see a portrait of an elderly Chinese woman who must have been Catherine Sterling. His hands shook as he typed back. "We need to talk." The response came immediately. "My attorney will be in touch. Take care, Marcus." Then nothing. She'd blocked his number. Marcus sat in his failing office and realized he'd made the worst mistake of his life. Not just financially, though that was catastrophic enough. He'd thrown away a woman who'd loved him. A woman who'd hidden her wealth because she wanted to be loved for herself, not her money. A woman who'd been willing to give him everything, until he proved he didn't deserve it. And now she was gone. Forever. The next 2 weeks were a masterclass in corporate warfare conducted so subtly that Marcus didn't even understand he was under attack until it was too late. Sterling Pharmaceuticals had holding companies. Those holding companies owned investment firms. Those investment firms held stakes in tech companies. Those tech companies were Chen Digital Marketing's entire client base. One by one, they disappeared. By week 2, Marcus had lost 80% of his revenue. His employees started looking for other jobs. His landlord mentioned that the building had been sold and the new owners were restructuring the tenant mix. Marcus would need to find new office space by the end of the month. The new owners were, of course, a subsidiary of a subsidiary of a subsidiary of Sterling Pharmaceuticals. Marcus tried calling Sarah. Blocked. He tried emailing. Returned as undeliverable. He tried showing up at her old apartment and found it empty, cleaned out, with new tenants already moving in. He hired a private investigator to find her. The investigator reported back that Sarah was living in San Francisco in a mansion in Pacific Heights. She was attending charity events. She'd been photographed at a Sterling Pharmaceuticals board meeting. She was, for all intents and purposes, untouchable. The divorce proceedings became a nightmare. Sarah's lawyers buried Marcus in paperwork. Discovery requests for every business record, every personal account, every transaction for the past 5 years. They found legitimate issues too, business expenses that Marcus had written off that were questionable. Travel that might not have been purely professional. The kind of things that happened in small businesses but looked bad under scrutiny. They're trying to bleed you dry in legal fees, Marcus's attorney warned. Every filing, every motion, every discovery request costs money. At this rate, you'll be bankrupt before the divorce is finalized. What are my options? Settle. Agree to whatever they want. Cut your losses and run. But Marcus's pride wouldn't let him. He countered every motion. He fought every request. He told himself this was about principle, about not letting Sarah's fancy lawyers push him around. Really, it was about ego. About not admitting he'd destroyed his life by underestimating a quiet woman who'd loved him. Meanwhile in San Francisco, Sarah was learning to be Catherine Sterling's heir. She met with department heads at Sterling Pharmaceuticals, learning about drug development and clinical trials. She toured the manufacturing facility in San Jose, seeing where medications were actually made. She sat in on meetings with the FDA about new drug applications. It was overwhelming. But it was also fascinating. Her grandmother had built something genuinely good. Sterling Pharmaceuticals charged less for medications than competitors. They invested in research for rare diseases that other companies ignored. They provided drugs to developing countries at cost. Your grandmother believed medicine was a calling, not just a business, Dr. Chu explained during a laboratory tour. She grew up watching her parents help people who couldn't afford traditional doctors. She never forgot that. Everything she built with that mission in mind. Sarah found herself falling in love with the company her grandmother had created. Maybe she couldn't be a scientist or a business executive. But she could be a guardian. She could protect Catherine's vision and make sure Sterling Pharmaceuticals stayed true to its mission. The baby helped ground her. Every kick, every movement reminded her this wasn't just about her anymore. She was building a legacy for her child. A legacy of healing and helping and doing good in the world. She also found comfort in the house itself. Walking the same halls her grandmother had walked. Sitting at the same desk. Looking at the same view. Sometimes she felt Catherine's presence so strongly it was like the old woman was standing beside her, guiding her through these impossible days. Do you think she'd be proud? Sarah asked Robert one evening as they reviewed paperwork in the study. She'd be enormously proud. You're everything she hoped you'd be. Compassionate, intelligent, humble enough to learn. I'm scared I'll fail her. You won't. You're a Sterling. You have her blood. You'll figure it out. December arrived with cold rain and news from Seattle. Marcus had filed for bankruptcy. Chen Digital Marketing was finished. Chloe had started dating one of Marcus's former business partners. Marcus himself had moved back in with his parents at age 35. He's requesting a modification to the settlement, Sarah's lead attorney reported. He wants to waive the $50,000 payment. Says he can't afford it. Sarah sat in her grandmother's study, and thought about the man she'd married. The man who'd promised to love her forever and then abandoned her at the worst moment of her life. Counteroffer, she said. I'll waive his financial obligations completely. He doesn't have to pay me anything. Sarah, you could take him for everything he has left. I don't want his money. I want him to know what he lost. Send him the final divorce decree with my signature. Include a note that I hope he finds happiness. And make sure he understands that I'm releasing all claims to his assets, such as they are. The attorney smiled. You're a better person than he deserves. No. I'm just done being angry. 2 weeks before Christmas, the divorce was finalized. Sarah Chen legally shed the last connection to Marcus. She reverted to her maiden name, though now it came with a different understanding. She wasn't just Sarah Chen anymore. She was Sarah Chen, CEO and majority shareholder of Sterling Pharmaceuticals. The board had voted unanimously to offer her the position. Not because of her business experience, which was non-existent, but because she was Catherine's heir and they'd all loved Catherine. They'd support Sarah, teach her, guide her. Your grandmother spent 40 years building this company, Dr. Chu had said. Now it's your turn. Take your time. Learn. Make mistakes. We'll help you. Christmas morning, Sarah woke up in Sterling House with snow falling outside and Jessica sleeping in the guest room down the hall. Her belly was enormous now, the baby due in 3 weeks. She felt ungainly and uncomfortable and also profoundly grateful. She had a home. She had her best friend. She had a company full of people who'd known and loved her grandmother. She had a fortune that would keep her child secure forever. And she had peace. Real peace. Not the absence of conflict, but the presence of purpose. Marcus called that afternoon. She'd unblocked his number after the divorce finalized. Sarah. Merry Christmas. Merry Christmas, Marcus. I wanted to say. He paused. I wanted to say I'm sorry. For everything. The way I handled the divorce, the timing, all of it. I was cruel. I was selfish. You deserved better. Yes, I did. Are you happy? I mean, really happy? Sarah looked around her grandmother's living room. The tree Jessica had insisted on decorating. The presents underneath for the baby who wasn't born yet. The photos of her mother and sister, finally home where they belonged. I'm getting there, she said honestly. Some days are harder than others. I still miss Emily. I still grieve what we had, or what I thought we had. But yes, Marcus. I think I'm going to be happy. That's good. You deserve that. He cleared his throat. The baby. When it's born. Would you consider letting me be part of its life? Are you asking for custody? No. God, no. I can barely take care of myself right now. But maybe visits? When you're comfortable. I know I don't deserve it, but we'll figure it out, Sarah said. After the baby's born. When we're both ready. But Marcus, you need to understand something. This child will grow up knowing who their mother is. Knowing about their great-grandmother's legacy. Knowing about Sterling Pharmaceuticals and what we do and why it matters. If you're part of their life, you're part of that too. I understand. I hope you do. I really hope you do. After hanging up, Sarah felt lighter. She'd forgiven Marcus. Not because he deserved it, but because holding on to anger was exhausting. She had better things to do with her energy. January arrived with Sarah's water breaking at 3 a.m. during a rainstorm. Jessica drove her to UCSF Medical Center while calling Robert Sterling, who insisted on coming despite the hour. The labor was long and difficult. 18 hours of pain that made Sarah wonder how anyone did this more than once. But when they finally placed her daughter in her arms, everything else faded away. She's perfect, Jessica whispered, tears streaming down her face. Catherine, Sarah said. Catherine Emily Chen. After my grandmother and my sister. The baby opened her eyes, Catherine Sterling's green eyes, and Sarah felt something click into place. This was why her grandmother had built everything. This was why she'd watched from the shadows for 30 years. This was why the money mattered. Not for luxury or power or status. But for this. For giving her descendants the freedom to choose their own paths. The security to take risks. The foundation to build something meaningful. Robert Sterling arrived an hour later with flowers and tears of his own. She looks like Catherine. Around the eyes. I know. Your grandmother would be so happy. So proud. Sarah looked at her daughter, at this tiny person who represented the future of everything Catherine had built. Tell me about her. Tell me everything. I want Catherine to know who her great-grandmother was. For the next hour, Robert told stories. About Catherine arriving in San Francisco with nothing. About her parents struggling to build a life in a country that didn't want them. About Catherine's determination to prove herself in a field that didn't value Chinese women. About the first drug she developed, the first patent, the first dollar earned. She was fierce, Robert said. Absolutely fierce. But also kind. She never forgot where she came from. She never let success make her cruel. I want to be like that, Sarah said, holding Catherine Emily close. I want to build on what she started. Make Sterling Pharmaceuticals even better. Help more people. You will. I know you will. The first 6 months of motherhood were chaos. Sarah had help, nannies and housekeepers and assistants, but she still insisted on doing much of the work herself. She wanted to be present for Catherine Emily's first smile, first laugh, first everything. She also started working seriously at Sterling Pharmaceuticals. She couldn't run the day-to-day operations, but she could set vision and direction. She could ask questions and challenge assumptions. She could make sure the company stayed true to Catherine's mission. We have a drug application pending for a treatment for a rare childhood cancer, Dr. Chu explained during a board meeting. The market is small. Maybe 500 kids worldwide. The development costs are $50 million. We'll never recoup the investment. Do it anyway, Sarah said. Are you sure? The board can cover development costs, but I'm sure. That's why Sterling Pharmaceuticals exists. To help people who need help, regardless of profit margin. My grandmother built this company on that principle. We're not changing it now. The board approved the funding unanimously. Word spread. Sterling Pharmaceuticals became known as the company that cared more about healing than profit. Other pharmaceutical companies called them naive. Wall Street analysts said they were leaving money on the table. But patients love them. Doctors love them. And slowly, quietly, other companies started following their example. Marcus visited Catherine Emily when she was 6 months old. He'd gotten a job managing marketing for a small nonprofit. He'd moved into a modest apartment. He looked humbler than Sarah had ever seen him. She's beautiful, he said, holding his daughter carefully. She has your eyes. She has Catherine's eyes. My grandmother's eyes. Right. Of course. Marcus looked around Sterling House, at the obvious wealth and comfort. I'm glad you found this, Sarah. I'm glad your grandmother left you all this. She left Catherine Emily all this. This is for her future. I know. And I know I don't have anything to offer financially. But I want to be a good father. I want to be present in whatever way you'll let me. They worked out an arrangement. Monthly visits supervised by Jessica or a nanny. Phone calls. Photos. Marcus couldn't give Catherine Emily money or status or opportunities. But he could give her time and attention. It was more than Sarah expected. Less than her daughter deserved. But it was something. 5 years later, Sarah stood at the groundbreaking ceremony for the Catherine Sterling Memorial Research Center. A state-of-the-art facility dedicated to developing treatments for rare diseases. $200 million investment. Her grandmother's legacy made real. Catherine Emily, now 5 years old, stood beside her in a miniature version of Sarah's suit. Mama, why are we building this? Because your great-grandmother believed medicine should help everyone, not just people who can afford it. We're building this to help kids who are sick with diseases that other companies think aren't important enough. That's nice, Mama. Yes, baby. It is nice. Robert Sterling stood on her other side, older now but still sharp. Catherine would be so proud of you, Sarah. You've taken everything she built and made it better. I had good teachers. Jessica was there too, now working as Sterling Pharmaceuticals' general counsel. She'd quit her old firm to join Sarah's team, saying she'd rather work for someone who actually cared about doing good in the world. And in the crowd, Sarah spotted Marcus. He'd asked permission to attend, to see what his daughter's mother had built. She'd said yes. Not because she wanted to prove anything to him, but because she didn't care enough anymore to object. After the ceremony, Marcus approached carefully. Sarah. Congratulations. This is incredible. Thank you. I wanted to say, I've been thinking a lot about what happened. About how I treated you. And I realized I never actually understood what I threw away. Not just the money, though obviously that was significant. But you. The person you are. The strength you have. The vision. Marcus, this isn't necessary, it is. For me. I need you to know that I understand now. I was too stupid and arrogant to see what was right in front of me. You weren't hiding your strength or your worth. I just never looked closely enough to see it. Sarah studied the man she'd once loved. He'd aged in the 5 years since the divorce. Stress and humility had changed him. He looked smaller somehow. Less impressive. I forgive you, she said simply. I forgave you a long time ago. Not because you deserve it, but because holding on to anger was exhausting. I had better things to do with my energy. Building this. He gestured at the construction site. Building this. Raising Catherine Emily. Honoring my grandmother's legacy. Living a life that matters. You're doing an incredible job. With all of it. As Marcus walked away, Catherine Emily tugged on Sarah's sleeve. Mama, who was that man? That's your father, sweetie. He loves you very much, even though he doesn't live with us. Oh. Okay. Catherine Emily's attention was already elsewhere, pointing at the construction equipment. Can I see the big digger? Sarah laughed and took her daughter's hand. 5 years ago, she'd stood in the rain at her sister's funeral, 7 months pregnant, watching her life fall apart. Her husband had left her. Her sister was dead. She'd had nothing except grief and uncertainty. Now she had everything. Not because of the money, though that helped. But because she'd found herself. She'd found her purpose. She'd found her grandmother's legacy and made it her own. Catherine Sterling had built an empire in the shadows, watching her granddaughters from a distance, loving them but never knowing them. Sarah was making sure Catherine Emily would never wonder if she was loved. Would never question her worth. Would grow up knowing she was part of something bigger than herself. That night, after Catherine Emily was asleep, Sarah sat in her grandmother's study and pulled out the letter Robert had given her 5 years ago. Catherine's final letter, meant to be read only after Sarah had settled into her new life. Dearest Sarah, if you're reading this, then you've survived the shock of learning who you really are. You've accepted the responsibility of our family's legacy. You've become the woman I always knew you could be. I'm sorry I never had the courage to meet you in person. I was afraid. Afraid you'd reject me the way your mother did. Afraid I'd cause more pain than healing. But I watched you from afar, and everything I saw made me proud. You chose teaching because you wanted to help young people. You married for love, not money. You lived simply and honestly. These are values worth more than any fortune. Now you have both. The values and the fortune. Use them wisely. Use them well. Sterling Pharmaceuticals is yours to shape. You can maintain my vision or create your own. You can sell it or expand it or transform it into something I never imagined. Whatever you choose, choose it with purpose. And Sarah, forgive me for staying away. Forgive your mother for running. Forgive whoever hurt you, including yourself if you've made mistakes. Life is too short for anger. Too precious for revenge. Build something beautiful. Build something that matters. Build something that will outlast us all. I love you. I've always loved you. Even from the shadows. Your grandmother, Catherine. Sarah folded the letter carefully and placed it back in its envelope. 5 years ago, she would have wept reading it. Now she just smiled. She'd done what Catherine asked. She'd built something beautiful. Not just the research center or the expanded company. But a life. A life filled with purpose and love and meaning. Marcus had thought he was divorcing a nobody at her sister's funeral. He thought he was escaping a burden. Instead, he'd freed a woman who became exactly who she was always meant to be. And that, Sarah thought as she looked out at the San Francisco skyline, was the best revenge of all. Not destroying him. Not making him suffer. But simply becoming so successful, so fulfilled, so completely herself that his opinion didn't matter anymore. Catherine Emily would grow up knowing her great-grandmother's story. She'd learn about Catherine Sterling's journey from refugee to pharmaceutical magnate. She'd understand the responsibility that came with their family's wealth. But more importantly, she'd grow up knowing she was loved. Unconditionally. Completely. Forever. And that was worth more than $600 million. That was worth everything.